Good evening. It's good to see you tonight. I'd like to call your attention to the 33rd chapter of the book of Genesis. We touched on some of it, this chapter last week, but we didn't get a chance to really finish it, and we're going to try to skim through it as quickly as we can and move into some things that I believe we'll enjoy studying tonight in chapters 34 and 35. So I was asked before class started, where are we going to be in study tonight? I said we're going to start in chapter 33, but hang on, we're going to be moving fast. So we're going to try to do that. I do want to make a comment or two about this entire study that we've been doing, particularly when we get into these interesting narratives about the lives of these patriarchs. One of the things I would simply observe is that, I don't know about you, but I find some degree of comfort, at least, in knowing that other families struggle with internal strife and issues, to realize that other people and other families are not perfect. Even the great names of the Bible, the great characters, they struggled with their family members. And that's going to become more and more evident as we continue to study. Something else I think is worth noting, just as a general observation about Bible characters and Bible events. God never glosses over anything. He simply tells us the facts. This is what happened. Now, we don't know always all the details, and oftentimes curiosity bugs us, and we wish we knew more, and we wish God would have said this or that or the other and filled in some more of those curiosity blanks for us. But we do have available to us what we need. God has seen fit to give us in His Word the things that are important. And so when you think about giving it to us bare, and there's no attempt to gloss over, again, it's not just so much that we can relate to it, but it's the honesty with which God approaches human beings and His dealings with them. And so sometimes it's disturbing, and we're going to be disturbed tonight in some of our study. This chapter, not so much. Chapter 33 is more of a quiet kind of chapter. It's a happy chapter, actually, of reunion. It's been 20 years, and these twin brothers have been separated one from the other, and their separation came as a consequence of one threatening to kill the other. And so you can imagine now that Jacob is being reunited with his older brother by a few minutes at least, Esau. There's some fear and trepidation on his part, as we looked at last week. But now the reunion takes place, and it's a happy one. So let's just read the text together and then begin our study. So Jacob lifted his eyes and looked, and there Esau was coming, and with him 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two maidservants. And he put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children behind, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then he crossed over before them and bowed himself to the ground 7 times until he came near to his brother. Before we continue reading, I want to ask you this about what we just read. What do you note about the companies and how he divided them up? What does it tell you about Jacob? What's that? He had his favorites, didn't he? And so he's going to put, the concubines, now the wives, second-class wives, they'll go first, then Leah, and then Rachel, and then Joseph. And so already we're learning something here about Joseph. How many brothers did Joseph have at this point? He had 10 other brothers, and he had a sister. But he alone is mentioned as being separated from the others, and he's going to go last. So, again, just something to note as we read together. So Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And he lifted his eyes and saw the women and children and said, "Who are these with you?" So he said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maidservants came near, they and their children, and bowed down. And Leah also came near, and with her children, and they bowed down. Afterward, Joseph and Rachel came near, and they bowed down. Then Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company which I met?" And he said, "These are to find favor in the sight of my Lord." Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." And Jacob said, "No, please, if I have now found favor in your sight, then receive my present from my hand, inasmuch as I have seen your face as though I had seen the face of God, and you were pleased with me. Please take my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, because I have enough." So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, "Let us take our journey. Let us go, and I will go before you." Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are weak, and the flocks and herd which are nursing are with me. And if the men should drive them hard one day, all the flock will die. Please let my Lord go on ahead before his servant. I will lead on slowly at a pace which the livestock that go before me and the children are able to endure, until I come to my Lord in Seir." And Esau said, "Now let me leave you with some of the people who are with me." But he said, "What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord." So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. Jacob journeyed to Succoth, built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore the name of the place is called Succoth. Then Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram, and he pitched his tent before the city, and he bought the parcel of land where he had pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of money. Then he erected an altar there and called it El Elohe Israel. So again, just a quick narrative here and a quick reunion between two brothers. Something worth noting is that this particular piece of land that Jacob has bought, and now he's going to dwell for a period of time, he's going to dig a well. We're not told that here, but we do learn later that he dug a well there, and someone came and sat on that well. And who was that person? Jesus sat on Jacob's well, did he not? It was near the city of Samaria, well, Sychar at the time, John chapter 4. And so Jesus was journeying, and on his journey he sent his disciples into the town, and they went to get... This town, of course, did not exist in the time of Jacob, but it was this piece of land, and it's this place where Jacob bought this land and dwelt for a period of time and dug a well, and eventually Jesus came and sat on that well. The interview, by the way, in John chapter 4 is itself a very powerful lesson. And so Jesus, of course, encounters this woman, a woman who's had five husbands. She's had 5 men in her life, at least 4 husbands, and the one you now have is not your husband. So she was living with a man she wasn't married to. And Jesus took the time and the occasion to speak with her at that well. And of course, as she was drawing water, he asked her to give him something to drink, which startled her. But and she wanted to know why he was speaking to her. And he said, "If you knew who I was and what I was asking, you would have asked me for what kind of water? Living water." So again, not that it's important to the narrative here, but it is something to consider. Any other questions or comments about chapter 33? Well, good. Chapter 34, verse 1. Well, before we read this, Jacob has returned home, and now he's purchased some acreage, and he's living here now. He's built booths for his livestock. What does that suggest to you is taking place in his mind? He's going to stay there. This is going to be his place. And he's going to live among the Shechemites, the people of Shechem. Was this in God's will? Was this God's intention? Now, before we read chapter 34, I wanted to ask you that question, but the next question I want to ask you, when we get into chapter 34, well, I'll ask it later. Let's just read. Now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as a wife." Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Now his sons were his livestock in the field, so Jacob held his peace until they came. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. And the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved and very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife, and make marriage with us. Give your daughters to us, and take our daughters to yourselves. So you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade in it, and acquire possessions for yourselves in it. Shechem said to her father, and said to her father and her brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me I will give. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift, and I will give according to what you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife. But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father, and spoke deceitfully, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said to them, we cannot do this thing, to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. But on this condition we will consent to you. If you will become as we are, if every male of you is circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. He was more honorable than all the household of his father. And Hamor and Shechem his son came to the gate of their city, and spoke with the men of their city, saying, these men are at peace with us. Therefore let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for indeed the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us as wives. Let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men consent to dwell with us, to be one people. If every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised, will not their livestock, their property, and every animal of theirs be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. And all who went out to the gate of his city heeded Hamor and Shechem his son. Every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. And it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. And they killed Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, their oxen, their donkeys, what was in the city and what was in the field, and all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I. But they said, should he treat our sister like a harlot? So, I mentioned to you earlier, I'm glad to know that our family is not the only family to ever confront an issue and to have a problem, and there are multiple problems in this family. But before we draw any conclusions about the morality of what's taking place on either side, be it the Hivites or be it the children of Israel, I think we need to consider other passages. And remember what we said last week. When Moses wrote the book of Genesis, he wrote it to a nation of people. And who were those people? The Israelites, the children of. And so he's writing this narrative and delivering it to them. Now I'm saying it that way because when you look at the behavior of Simeon and Levi, you may want to quickly conclude this was an evil thing that they did. This was a sinful thing. Jacob certainly thought it was a terrible thing. Now, we're going to say more about Jacob in a moment, but Jacob thought it was a terrible thing, and the reason he thought it was terrible because it's not going to work out for me now to stay here because I'm few in number, and people are going to find out what you did, and we're going to be in some serious trouble. When he was dying, this was still on Jacob's mind, and he reminded his sons about how much trouble they had brought into the family because of this particular incident. But we need to also ask, why was God allowing this? I mean, I suppose we ask that anytime something terrible like this happened, but it's particularly in light of this family and the promises that God has made through this family and their descendants. Now, why would God allow this to happen? And more importantly, and to the point, why would God allow this to be recorded for us to know about it? Why do we need to hear this? and of what value is it to us? And so if you approach the text with those kinds of questions, that's how I'm approaching it, and maybe you'll read it a little differently. And there is some ambiguity in some of it, to be honest with you. We don't know exactly what it means when he violated her. We don't know exactly what it means when she went out to see the daughters of the land. We can speculate, and we can speculate with some degree of certainty as to what that probably meant. She's probably a teenager now. She's in her early to mid-teens, many scholars would suggest. That is Dinah. And she's doing what a lot of teenage girls do, bringing their fathers a lot of grief. Isn't that right, Doug? Yeah, I noticed our song leader tonight's T-shirt said, "You can't scare me, I have 3 daughters," or something like that. Yes, he's having fun now. Wait until they're teenagers, indeed. He got 3 of them, Doug. You only got 2. Well, you have. Never mind. Okay, I understand. So, anyway, to go out and see the daughters of the land, what does that mean? What do you think it means?
I think they were mixing up. She was
Mixing up with them, okay. Hanging out at the mall, probably painted her hair pink and had black clothes on and maybe a nose ring or something. Well, something like that was taking place, no doubt. When you think about these people and what was typically taking place, they were not monotheistic people. In fact, Jacob's family presently is not a monotheistic family, strictly speaking. And so these people among whom they're dwelling are pagans. And a part of idolatry and paganism was gross immorality. And we would say today clubbing or partying, that kind of thing. So this is the teenage girl that's going out on the party scene. And she's having a good time. And here the prince of the land, the son of the monarch, thinks he can have what he wants. He can do what he wants. And he sees a pretty girl and he says, "I want her," and he violated her. There's a lot of question about what this means. Was she complicit in this? Well, even if she was complicit, if her age is guessed right, this would be statutory rape, would it not? She's not really old enough to be consenting yet, although many people would argue, yeah, but at that period of time, girls as young as 12 were getting married. In fact, today, you saw that on Facebook, didn't you, Doug? I think you shared that. This 84-year-old creep married a 12-year-old girl. He's Muslim, by the way. But Muslims do that all the time, beginning with Muhammad, the prophet, so-called prophet. He had a little girl that he married too. Creepy people. But anyway, nevertheless, we don't know what his real motive was at first, but she's hanging out with the daughters of the land, and he sees her, he likes her, and he violates her. Most commentators say he raped her. And we do know from what is about to take place in the next chapter, or what takes place here in the remainder of this chapter, rather, is that when they go to take Dinah, she's being held beyond her will. She was not complicit in that. She wanted to go home, no doubt. And so she's been abducted. And so when they go to speak kindly to Jacob and his sons about whether marriage can be proposed, there's a little more going on than probably meets the eye, and we have to weigh all of that. The question I have is, what's Jacob doing in this matter? Number one, why would Jacob allow his daughter to mix and mingle with these kinds of people? I mean, they're not good people. We know that because of what we see happening here. This is not a good thing to take place. So,
setting up roots there when he was put.
He should have been nomadic and moving on and not putting down roots. Indeed, that's the overall message here. When you look at, and we made this point last week, God uses sin in our lives and sinful men to accomplish his purpose. He just does. He does all the time. You have taken and with wicked hands have crucified and slain the Son of God. Why did they do that? Because God foreordained before the foundation of the world that this must be done. And so, how was it done? Through envy, Pilate said, they delivered Jesus to be crucified. So, base, sinful man accomplished God's purpose. God did not intend for Jacob to settle down and put roots here and have his family settle here. They weren't settled here long, and look what's already happening. And look at the proposal that's being made. The proposal is, you mix and mingle with us and become one with us. That's what they were proposing. And that's the very thing God did not intend to happen with his people. And so he did not intend for that to happen. So you say, why would God allow such a horrible thing to take place? Allow this poor girl to be raped and then the brothers to go and take vengeance upon this family themselves. Why would God allow this to happen? Well, did God allow it? Well, indeed he did. Did God approve of it? That's another question. It's another question. And if he did approve of it, what part of it did he approve? Did he approve the action of Simeon and Levi? Did he approve the action of Jacob, who did nothing? Jacob did nothing. Now, Doug, one of your daughters had been violated by someone in the neighborhood. What would you do? Who said shoot him? You didn't get a chance to answer, Doug. I got a blast out of that. So, well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Well, Jacob's calculating, isn't he? He's thinking to himself, if I do what Simeon and Levi actually did, if I do that, it's going to cause me trouble, so I'm not going to do anything. And that seemed to be what action he's taking. And the first question I have as a father, though, is why is he letting his daughter do this? Maybe he wasn't letting her. She might have snuck under the tent in the middle of the night and went off on her own, and nobody knew about it. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time a teenage girl did something like that. Would it? Lydia? It wouldn't be the first time that someone snuck off. Do I? She didn't live in a tent. You're right. Thank you for reminding me about that. Never snuck out of the tent, yeah. I never jumped out of a window either. But it makes you wonder why Jacob didn't do more to protect his family, why he's setting down roots here. But is Jacob at this point, I'm guessing he's probably 110 maybe in that age range? Yes, ma'am?
But wasn't Moses using this story to illustrate to the children of Israel what would happen to them if they went into the promised land and mingled with these people?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, well, no, I'm actually going to be going there myself.
That's all right, you got your point, I know.
Yeah. Them. Okay, so when you think about, I'm sorry.
I'm going to get a translator.
Okay, you get a translator, friend, please.
My translator left me for better grain.
Okay, I'm going to say it. Sunday morning, the word is. That's 2 letters, right? I-S. It had 2 syllables. Is. Okay, thank you. That's all I'm saying. Is. Okay, that's one word. Is. Okay. We love you, friend, very much. Okay, so the question I have is, were Simeon and Levi frustrated with their fathers in action? Of course. Have sons ever been frustrated with what they perceive to be inaction on the part of their father? You know, fathers are thinking about a lot of things and calculating a lot of things, and sometimes, you know, brothers and sisters say, well, that shouldn't happen, that's not right, and so we just plow right ahead without considering the consequences. And what's fascinating to me is that in this case, they plowed right ahead without considering the consequences, no doubt out of frustration, but it worked out for God's purpose, because Jacob very soon picks up and moves as God intended for him to do and continue to be a sojourner. But the question I have is, did Simeon and Levi do the right thing? Now, before you answer, you're probably going to be looking at it in light of the Sermon on the Mount or anything the apostles might have taught or from a Christian standpoint. But if you can go back to 1500 BC And you can put yourself in the sandals of one of those Israelites who's just been told that civil law requires an eye for what? And a tooth for a... Okay, that's how you're functioning as a civil government. And by the way, we still have that philosophy built into our judicial system, and it comes from the law of Moses. But that's how they were operating. And you're reading about your history. You're reading about your forefathers. And you read about Simeon and Levi. You're probably singing their praises. And I'm not just guessing here. There are extra biblical Jewish books, apocryphal books, 2 of them in particular, who mention this incident and praise Simeon and Levi. Now you say, but that's not biblical. They weren't inspired. That's true. But it does give you an insight into how Jewish people read this text, how they understood it, and what it said to them. What it said to them was, Simeon and Levi were heroes. They did the right thing. They stood up for justice. This was unjust. Their sister was raped. She was violated. She was mistreated. And so they took the law into their own hands, indeed, but they did the right thing. Now, about the time Moses is writing this, or not long before Moses would write this, an incident took place at Mount Sinai. God gave the law. And Moses went up on the mountain and he received 2 tablets of stone. And God had written with his very finger the 10 commandments. Moses came down from the mountain. And when he came down from the mountain, he met up with Joshua. And he said, and Joshua said, I hear the sound of war in the camp. And Moses said, that's not the sound of war. They got into the camp, and what did they find? Israel was doing what? Giving themselves totally to idolatry. And Moses got angry, and he threw down the 10 commandments, broke the tablets. He ground up that golden calf, made them drink it. And then he came out and he said, who is on the Lord's side? And who stepped forward? The Levites. The Levites stepped forward. And Moses said, take your sword. And they went through the camp and they killed 3,000 died the day the law of Moses was given. 3,000 were saved the day the gospel was given. But anyway, interesting contrast and comparison. But the Levites are the ones who stood with Moses and took on their sword and went out and executed God's wrath. This was according to God's dictate. These people died because of their idolatry. And so this is what's taking place in the very lives of the people that are for the first one to read this narrative. So how do you think they read what Levi did here? They're probably thinking, Levi's always been this way, and his children are now that way. And it's not going to end here. In fact, in Numbers chapter 25, during the lifetime of Moses, there's going to be a terrible incident with the people of Midian. Idolatry will be brought into the camp. Immorality is associated with that. And of course, there's a man brazen enough to bring a Midianite woman into the camp in the very sight of Moses. And Phinehas saw it. And what did Phinehas do? He took a javelin and he drove it through both of them. Probably in the very sex act itself. And drove that javelin through both of their bodies and killed them. And God praised him for his zeal. Phinehas was a son of... Who's a son of? Levi. So again, if you read this text, and that's what's taking place in your lifetime, you're going to hear it differently than someone today who reads the Sermon on the Mount, then we go back to the Old Testament, read this, and say, that's terrible. I can't believe they did that. Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't know where to come down on this. I'm not sure how to understand this. Is this right? Did Simeon and Levi do right? You say, well, is this just? Well, what kind of justice did they have in that day and time? Justice of the sword, and they used it. And you say, but now wait a minute. This was an honorable request these men made. They came to them wanting to marry this girl, make it right, and went into agreement with them. But wait a minute. They had to go back to their fellow citizens. Now, what are you going to tell the guys back home? Hey, I want to marry this girl, and I want you to do something that's going to be very humiliating and painful. How are you going to convince him to do that?
You're the king.
Well, you could order it, but they didn't go order it.
They were going to have the privilege to marry other women.
That's part of it. But what's the real motivation here?
What Jacob
Okay, follow the money. Their livestock will be our livestock. What they have will be ours. That's what got them all to agree to do this. So this wasn't really completely an honorable thing. They were conniving and scheming themselves. You say, who's conniving and scheming more? I don't know. I know that Simeon and Levi were lying. They were deceiving. The text says that. Of course, maybe they were lying and deceiving in the sense they were saying, we want you to do something we know you ain't going to do. And so they were just telling that to put them off and get their sister back. And when they said, okay, we'll do that, they're like, oh, what do we do now? I guess we'll kill them all. I mean, I don't know how this plan really was playing out and what part of it was the intended deception. I'm just saying this is difficult to understand in light of how we interpret human behavior and human morality and how we are to come down on either side of this. I do know the one main point is God did not intend for Jacob to put down roots and dwell among the people of Canaan. He wanted them to continue to move and be nomadic so that they wouldn't intermingle, they wouldn't go into league with these people, they wouldn't be lost into that group and become simply another Canaanite family. Yes?
Paul indicated that false axiom was through evil that good may come is not something that righteous people should practice.
Indeed.
It's not a violation of that here with Simeon and Levi.
Well,
They not do evil that good might come.
the question I'm asking is, did they do evil? That's the $64,000 question.
Deceit is evil.
Deceit is evil. But again, I'm going back to raise that question myself. What were they deceiving them about? Were they deceiving them when they proposed? You circumcise yourselves and you can have our daughters. I'm thinking they're probably saying, that's crazy, we're not going to do that. And they figured that would be the end of the matter. Maybe they were just speaking deceitfully when they said, because they never intended it, they didn't think they would. I don't know, maybe, did they fully plan out when they said, you go circumcise yourself, convince everybody in town to circumcise themselves, and then in 3 days when you're sore, we're going to come over there and take advantage of you? Maybe. I don't know. They could have figured all that out. It's just a hard one to know. It's really difficult to say. It's not a good thing. I mean, I'm not suggesting we go around and make proposals like this to people and take advantage of them, Muslim or otherwise. Yes, Roger?
Several hundred years later, you have the same situation during the Intertestament period when you got John Hyrcanus going
Yeah.
to the people of the Idumeans,
Yes.
doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, that's right. Tommy?
It's always sort of been that way. World War II, they used this deceiving telegrams, whatever it was they had even fake armies that set out to try to deceive the Germans were, thinking that they're going to come in over here, and it's just, fake equipment, it's just balloons or whatever it was they had blown up, fake tanks and all. All this was deceit.
Misdirection and deceit. Yeah.
And it's always been used in war.
That's the nature of warfare, isn't it? So I mean, it's a tough question. I'm not gonna pray. Okay, let's just go on to chapter 35 before we get in trouble. Okay. Sorry that Dinah got in trouble, and sorry that she was put in a position where she could get in trouble.
How old was Simeon?
I don't know. That's
He was firstborn.
no. Reuben was firstborn. I don't know. And some other texts read a little differently, and it suggests that all the sons of Jacob involved themselves in the plundering of the city. Anyway, okay, chapter 35. God said to Jacob, arise. Go. By the way, this chapter, again, is totally different in tone. It's, in fact, if you look at chapter 35, it's almost like we have different histories, different periods of time in Jacob's life, kind of a collage just thrown together to kind of summarize. It's kind of a summary chapter. So we're taking bits and pieces of his life and just piecing it together as we read through the chapter. So God said to Jacob, arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there and make an altar there to God who appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau your brother. Now wait a minute. Didn't Jacob say, as he was fleeing from Esau, when he got to Bethel and he had that vision, didn't he make a vow? And what was the vow? If you bless me where I'm going, did God bless him? Indeed he did. If you bless where I'm going, I'll bring a tithe back. He hadn't yet done that. He's not yet done what he said he would do. So God's nudging him and reminding him, you said you're going to do this, so let's get busy and let's do it. Jacob said to his household, to all who were with him, put away the foreign gods that are among. Oh my. We're reading about Jacob, i.e. Israel. And this is his family.
His wives.
And what is characteristic of his family? So put away the foreign gods that are among you, purify yourselves, change your garments. Let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me in the way which I have gone. So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods which were in their hands, and the earrings which were in their ears. And Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were all around them, and they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. So Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. And he built an altar there and called the name of the place El Bethel, because there God appeared to him when he fled from the face of his brother. Now, let's just stop here a moment. Jacob was like everyone, every child of God. There are highs and there are lows in their spiritual journey. I think it's safe to say that at this period of Jacob's life, he's in a spiritual low. And it's time for spiritual renewal. It's time for a revival, literally. And so God is urging him to be revived, and to revive your family, and to renew your commitment, and to keep your word that you've given to me. Reminds me of another incident. 1 Samuel chapter 7, and I think it's important to mention this, because Deanna, Sunday week, we're going to begin our gospel meeting. Now, we say gospel meeting among ourselves because we understand what that means. Most of our religious neighbors have what they call a revival. And we don't call ours a revival. Why don't we?
Should, probably.
Indeed, we should. Let me ask you, before you say anything, does the Villa Rica Church of Christ need a revival? Don't all of you answer at once. It's okay. The elders are not taking notes. You can answer freely if you want. You want?
I think we've had a shot of reviving with our new deacons.
I agree with that. I think you're exactly right. Our deacons have infused a lot of energy and excitement, renewal among us. But that's just the beginning of a flame that needs to be fanned into a roaring, raging fire once again. And we need to be revived again. And perhaps all of us, individually and collectively, could look at ourselves and think of ways that we could renew ourselves and revive ourselves and recommit ourselves to the Lord. 1 Samuel chapter 7, verse 3, Samuel spoke to all the house of Israel, saying, if you return to the Lord with all your hearts, then put away the foreign gods and the Ashtaroths from among you, and prepare your hearts for the Lord, and serve him only, and he will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines. It's almost an identical thing that he's saying at this period of time, the great judge of Israel, that the first man of Israel, in fact, Israel himself, is saying to his family, put away the gods which are among you, and return to the Lord. Now, notice in 1 Samuel 7, the children of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashtaroths and served the Lord only. And Samuel said, gather all Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered together at Mizpah, drew water, and poured it out before the Lord. And they fasted that day and said there, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the children of Israel at Mizpah. When the Philistines heard that the children of Israel had gathered together at Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. And when the children of Israel heard of it, they were afraid of the Philistines. So the children of Israel said to Samuel, "Do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, that he may save us from the hand of the Philistines." Samuel took a suckling lamb and offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. Now Samuel was offering up the burnt offering. The Philistines drew near to battle against Israel, but the Lord thundered with a loud thunder upon the Philistines that day, and so confused them that they were overcome before Israel. And the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines, drove them back as far below as Beth-kar. Then Samuel took a stone and set it up between Mizpah and Shin, and called its name Ebenezer, saying, "Thus far the Lord has helped us. Here I raise my Ebenezer. God has helped me." And here Jacob is telling his family to put away the gods, renew yourselves, repent of your sins, make confession, let's return to God with our whole heart. And what did God do? As they journeyed, there was a terror of God upon all the cities. So what Jacob feared, I'm few in number and I'm going to be outnumbered and I'm going to be vulnerable. He doesn't have to worry about that because God is blessing him and God is with him. I know this, that whenever a church, whenever an individual, whenever a family renews itself and returns to God with its whole heart, heaven's blessing will rain upon us again. And it's heaven's blessing, brethren, that we need first and foremost if we're going to succeed as a congregation. We love our deacons, we love our elders, we love everybody. But without God's blessing, all we do is sure to fail. And with his blessing, whatever little bit we can do and how feeble our efforts may be will nevertheless be blessed because our help comes from the Lord. Okay, verse 8. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried below Bethel under the terebinth tree. So the name of it was called Alan Bakuth. Where do you read about the death of Rebekah? You can hear the music.
She died at the birth of Benjamin, which was not long after this, didn't she?
Rebekah didn't give birth to Benjamin.
Not Rebecca, Rachel, Steve.
Yeah, that's a different woman.
Excuse me.
She'd probably be offended if you...
Rachel. Did you get that? Rachel.
Yes, ma'am, I got that. I'm asking about Rebekah. And there's no mention of her death. She did say, regarding Jacob, she pronounced a curse upon herself if she were to lose her sons. Well, her son ran off to flee the wrath of his brother. And then his brother, of course, went off and married women of the land. So in essence, she lost both of her sons at the same time. And then she obviously died, and there's no mention of it. But her nurse is mentioned. Why? I don't have any idea why God mentioned the death of Deborah, other than perhaps it happened near this period of time in Jacob's life. His mother was dead before he returned home. It just goes to show you, doesn't it? The way we view people and the way God views people are different. That's all I can say about it. Why God would not mention anything about Rebekah's death, but mention Deborah's death. So verse 9, God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Padan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, "Your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name." So he called his name Israel. Also God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac I give to you, and to your descendants after you I give this land." Then God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. So Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, a pillar of stone, and he poured a drink offering on it, and he poured oil on it. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spoke with him Bethel. They journeyed from Bethel, and when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath. What's another name for Ephrath? Bethlehem. Same place. Rachel labored in childbirth, and she had hard labor. And it came to pass, when she was hard in labor, that the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, you will have this son also." And so it was, as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Ben-Oni, which his father called him, but his father they called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried in the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. And Jacob set a pillar on her grave, which is the pillar of Rachel's grave, to this day. Then Israel journeyed and pitched his tent beyond the tower of Eder. It happened when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. And that's all you're told here in Genesis. 1 Chronicles 5, verse 1, the Chronicle writer tells us that Reuben forfeited his birthright and his standing as firstborn by doing this. So, and it was mentioned later on Israel's death, his dying bed. This was mentioned also, the shame that he brought into the family by doing such a thing. Aren't you glad to know that you're not the only one, and your family's not the only family to have major problems? All of us struggle in one way or the other. And that's right. This is some of the things they're struggling with are pretty outrageous, according to our state. I hope it's not that bad in your home, you know. I mean, rape and murder and theft, those are, yeah, those are pretty serious things, yeah. But number 832 in your songbooks, please. Don't forget, this Friday evening, Cedartown will be hosting the area-wide singing at 7 o'clock. Also, West Georgia is going to be hosting a youth rally. The 24th, that'll be this weekend, 24th, 25th, with Dr. Noby Stone from Mayfair Church across Huntsville. I believe he's an astronaut or a rocket scientist or something. Anyway, he's one of those really smart people. We'll be speaking this weekend. Also, our youth group are leaving. What time Friday are you leaving? Where are you? Anybody? Yes? I think it's 12:30. 12:30? Okay. The van has been gotten ready and prepared, and so hopefully you'll be able to make the journey safely in our van. And I appreciate Jordan helping us with that. Don't forget, next Monday night is the fourth Monday of the month, and it will be our Monday for the Master meeting at 6 o'clock. We'll be meeting here at 6 to eat, and we'll be giving out cards and assignments and other works. This will be a big Monday for the Master because it will also be the Monday for the Master when we're preparing for our gospel meeting that begins the next Lord's Day with Brother Charles Cochran from the East Ridge congregation in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Don't forget, there are postcards on the table in the foyer. Urge you to take some of those cards with you and distribute them at work, among your family members, neighbors, and friends. And of course, be planning yourself to be a part of our gospel meeting, our revival that's going to take place Sunday week, not this coming Lord's Day, but the next. And again, in preparation for that, the deacons are coordinating a work day for us here at the building, March the 4th. That's the Saturday, just before the gospel meeting begins. They'll be having work assignments here at the building, but we will also be here meeting those of us who aren't going to be cleaning and organizing and fixing to go door to door in our neighborhood, inviting people personally to come to our revival. And so we want to invite you to be a part of that as well. So it's a big day of work and activity for us on March the 4th, beginning, I guess, around 8:30 or 9 o'clock in the morning. I see another hand or announcement back here. Someone have an announcement? Kay, yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Dinah Page's mother, Rebecca,
Uh-huh.
lives up in Illinois.
Yes.
She's been diagnosed with stage 3 cancer.
Oh, my.
She's been in the hospital like 50-something days. Someone did physical therapy, I think she fell and broke her leg, and then they discovered a tumor, and they removed that and came back stage 3 cancer.
That's terrible. I'm sorry to hear that.
She's not strong enough to get the chemo, so she's got to go to physical therapy for a week, and then chemo.
Is Diana still up there with her at the present time?
She's home right now.
Is she home?
Pretty sure she just got back. But
Okay.
probably
So I know she's been with her. That's a very sad situation. Certainly want to remember Diana Page's mother. Diana Page, mother, has been diagnosed with stage 3 cancer, you said it was. And she's been up there ministering to her. She's been having poor health for some time, but they just discovered this apparently. That's news to me. I just heard that just now. Very sorry to hear that. Kay Bosworth is making some improvement. She has had some difficulty and complications after her surgery, but continues to do well. The same with Tammy Howard. She's continuing to improve. She's had some trouble and a few setbacks, but is continuing to make overall good progress. Jeff Adams, I haven't heard recently. Is he improving still? Glad to report that. Anyone else we need to mention? Oh yeah, Martha Reed, Deanna's grandmother, is on our prayer list also. And she's been moved to a rehab facility, or will be this. She has been this past Monday? Okay. Anyone else we need to mention on our prayer list tonight? Yes, ma'am.
Right before we come to church tonight, our nephew, Dalton, he's probably about 6 years old. He fell on the trampoline, but he broke his arm, and they took him to Rica, but Rica sent him into Children's Hospital in Monroe because he was just broke so bad they couldn't repair it.
Oh, that's terrible. This is your nephew?
Yeah, Dalton.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to hear that. We certainly hope he's going to be okay. I want to be praying for him. What? Dalton Richards. Okay. Mentioned in our class tonight, and I'm going to remind you again in our announcements, but in our closing remarks, our gospel meeting / revival begins Sunday week. And this is an exciting time in the life of any congregation, and especially this is an important time for us here at Villa Rica. I look forward to hearing Brother Cochran, who's going to be speaking to us during that series of lessons. But certainly we want to take this time and opportunity to do some soul searching ourselves, and renewal, and restoration, and revival among ourselves here in this congregation. And we can do that, of course, by making sure that we are in good standing with God, having obeyed the gospel and remaining faithful to the Lord throughout our Christian journey. But we can also help revive ourselves in our work by inviting others to be a part of this gospel meeting. But of course, it works better to invite others to be a part of something that we are also a part of ourselves and greatly involved with and faithfully involved with. If you're subject to heaven's invitation, we can help you with that renewal tonight. Would you please make that need known? All together we stand and as we sing.